Hello and welcome. I'm Annette Reeder from the biblicalnutritionist.com. And today we're talking about sleep deprivation in teenagers and why this is so important to recognize because sleep deprivation in teenagers actually leads to depression. And there's a lot going on in our world today with all of the horrific stuff that's going on, but it's also happening in the schools. And our teenagers are greatly affected by what's going on in their schools. Yet, if we recognize that they need good sleep to then kind of ward off any thoughts of depression, then we can save them a lot of trouble in their years. So I'm excited to interview Dr. Sean Talbot about this topic. And he has some really great takeaways for us. But before we go there, just recognize that there are steps that we can do. We can try to get our teenagers to eat healthier because that also is going to help make a difference. We can try to set good patterns of sleep times. And Dr. Sean's going to talk about some more remedies too. But I'm sharing this video with you because you matter to me. You matter to me, and I thank you for letting me share with you God's recipe for excellent health. And that always includes understanding how much God loves you. So as you listen to this interview today, think about your teenagers or your grandchildren, or maybe it's you we're talking about. Maybe it's the kids' parents that we're talking about. I think a lot of people are going to identify with how sleep deprivation leads to depressive thoughts and even anxiety issues. So we've got some answers for you today. So enjoy this video. So Dr. Sean, it is always a joy to have this conversation with you. You bring such great knowledge that we can actually take with us and start applying. And it's knowledge that we need today. Well, today, this topic that we're talking about, I found this blog on your website and it totally caught me because you're talking about sleep deprivation in teenagers and how that leads to depression. And then we're going to go into what comes next after that if they don't make the right choices. So tell us more about this. What drew your attention to this and why is this so important? Because we've got a lot of teenagers that are a little bit on the highly strung out mode right now.
Right.
The world kind of feeds it, but that's not an excuse. So there's a lot of parents that are going to need to listen to what you have to say. So help us with this topic of sleep deprivation leading to depression.
Yeah, and that's the direction of occurrence too. So for a long time, there's been this sort of co-association of teenagers being sleep deprived and teenagers being depressed. And, depressed teenagers tend to not sleep very well. Teenagers who don't sleep very well tend to be depressed. And so, they sort of co-occur, right? They're what we call comorbid with each other. This new study came out showing that the sleep problems actually precede the depressive episodes, meaning the teenagers don't become depressed until they're sleep deprived, or they become sleep deprived and that leads to depression. And that's, I think, is a really, really important development because there's lots of teenagers out there that, they're depressed and their parents take them to the doctor and the knee-jerk reaction is, well, let's give them an antidepressant. And that is definitely not the right way to go as a first-line therapy because a lot of those antidepressant drugs can actually increase pretty substantially the risk of suicidal thoughts and suicidal actions in teenagers. And so that is the last place that parents want to go. Now that we know this relationship, that the sleep problem comes first and leads to the depression, why don't we turn our focus and say, well, let's solve the root of the problem. Let's solve the sleep problem so that it doesn't develop into the depression problem. And that I think is what a lot of kids and teenagers need these days anyway.
You're so right on this because even the topic that you brought up, the suicidal thoughts, that's happening as young as 7 and 8-year-olds.
Yeah, it's terrible.
We're talking about teenagers, but we could back this up.
Yeah, yeah. And it's even worse post-pandemic, like these are problems that have been with us for a long time. And then after going through the pandemic and kids and teenagers getting, socially disconnected and not being able to gather in groups and, losing their social networks and things like that, like their real social networks, that's a problem. I mean, the Surgeon General talks about it all the time, the loneliness epidemic that we have right now. And it's especially problematic for kids and teenagers.
It is. It's really sad. And so when it's a problem with the kids and teenagers, then the parents are at a miss when knowing what to do. They don't know where to turn. And you already mentioned, typically you go to the doctor and you get an antidepressant, and then that has other side effects and risk
Right.
involved in it. So besides learning better sleep patterns and learning better parenting skills, I mean, those are good options. But what can a parent do right now to help reverse this?
Yeah, so if we think about so from my perspective as a nutritional biochemist, right, I think about the underlying biochemistry underneath the psychology. So if we're talking about the psychology of depression or the psychology of sleep problems, and we look at the biochemistry underneath that, there are plenty of things that we can do that are really easy and really effective. One of those is bright sunlight in the morning. That seems to be one of the most effective natural therapies to help both the mood and the sleep cycle. And so if you can get just as little as 10 minutes of morning sunlight exposure, it helps to reset the entire circadian rhythm. So that means you have more serotonin during the day, so you're happier. And if you can get darkness at night instead of, iPhone screens and computers and games and things like that,
Yep.
if we can get darkness, that signals the body to produce melatonin. So bright sunshine in the morning, darkness at night when you're ready to go to bed can completely reshift that circadian rhythm and change the whole mood dynamic for kids and teenagers.
Okay, just a side question here. So, teenagers, are you saying they shouldn't have any lights on in their bedroom when they're sleeping at night?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. Yeah, you want your room to be as dark as a cave. Even a dim alarm clock is not a good thing. I know a lot of kids that have their phone in their room. That is an awful thing to do. The phone should live in the kitchen or someplace outside the bedroom. You shouldn't have a nightlight. Maybe there can be a nightlight, in the bathroom down the hallway, but the room should be as dark as possible. So I write in some of my books about this idea that we're kind of living in twilight. Our days are never bright enough because we sort of leave the house and go to school or leave the house and go to the office, and we're not outside where the bright sunshine is. So we don't get enough brightness. But then at night, we don't get enough darkness because we have the TV on and we have the lights on and we have all these blinking things in our bedrooms. And so we're never quite bright enough and we're never quite dark enough. And that's really what we need. We need that amplitude of brightness and darkness.
A great answer. I appreciate that. Okay, so what's next? So what next do we do? So we've adjusted the lighting. We go from brightness to darkness. What else can a parent do, or what else can that teenager do?
Yeah, and then the parents have probably heard this stuff about keeping the room dark and cool and quiet and all that kind of stuff and avoiding screens an hour before you go to bed and those are things they've probably heard before, but they might not have heard about. So while we're trying to change the amplitude of the brightness, right, bright in the morning and dark at night, we can also change the amplitude of our natural melatonin synthesis. And so we can use natural ingredients, amino acids like tryptophan, polyphenols like something called 6-MBOA that comes from corn grass to actually improve the body's production of serotonin so we're happier in the day, and melatonin so we have better sleep quality at night. And so, we can change the environment around us, and then we can also change our internal environment by changing that internal biochemistry so our body works better on a physiological basis.
All right, well, that's fascinating. Um, so if but you're talking about it daytime and nighttime. So are these herbal extracts that you can take any time of the day you want, or is there a better time?
Yeah, this is one of the things that's really interesting about it. So we've done some studies to show we can take the same two components, right? So the first component is an amino acid. It's a form of tryptophan that's the active form of tryptophan called 5-HTP, 5-hydroxytryptophan. That can be used as a building block to make more serotonin. We also use another ingredient called corn grass that's high in this polyphenol called 6-MBOA, which the body can use to make melatonin. And so the only difference between, let me restate that. 5-HTP can be used to make serotonin or melatonin. Corn grass can be used to make serotonin or melatonin. But how does the body know which to make? It's all determined by light. So if you took 5-HTP and corn grass right now and went out into the bright sunshine, your body would say, let's make serotonin. It would take those building blocks, those natural building blocks, and it would make them into serotonin because of that lightness signal, and you'd be happier during the day. Serotonin, sort of the neurotransmitter of happiness. If you took those same building blocks and went into a dark bedroom to get ready for sleep, within about 30 to 60 minutes, your body would use that darkness signal to take those same building blocks and make melatonin out of them. So the only difference is that lightness signal. So think about what I said just a few minutes ago about the amplitude of our light dark signaling. Now we layer on top of that the amplitude of our serotonin melatonin signaling. And if you were to use these natural building blocks along with bright sunshine, you're going to have a happy day. If you use them along with darkness at night, you're going to have a good quality sleep at night. And you do that the next day and the next night and the next day and the next night. And now your body is being trained, almost like a physical activity regimen, trained to make serotonin when you need it for happiness and melatonin when you need it for sleep quality. And that speaks just to what we just talked about in a minute ago of teenagers being sleep deprived and depressed. We can solve both of those problems simultaneously with some of these natural interventions.
That's incredible. So I have a book on my shelf by a doctor, and it's called "Have a New Kid by Friday." And
That's great.
I think you've just described that. You can have a new kid by Friday by, doing the steps that you've just shared, recognizing the light and dark, and then if you want to try the natural extracts, add that in for a week, and you may have the child you gave birth to. So, you may have that child back again, that sweet child, that complacent child, that child that responds to the parents' wishes, that idealistic child. You may have a new kid by Friday, is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
Well,
What
think of the flip side of that, where most kids are these days, and most of their parents are too. You have a stressful day, you get irritated about something, you have one of those days, right? So the day's over, now you're trying to go to bed, you're still a little bit irritated. As soon as you lie down, you start revisiting what happened that day. What set you off? What did that person say to you? What was the problem that caused the whole day to go kablooey? And so now that day is interfering with your sleep. Now you have a bad night of sleep because you're worrying and ruminating, and you get up and you're off to a bad start for the next day, right? You repeat that a couple of times and everything's wrong. Flip it completely around. Let's have a good day where you have more serotonin and you're happier and you're more resilient and you can solve problems better and you're more empathetic and engaged with people. What a great day this was. Then because of that serotonin is good, now your body's going to be able to make more melatonin that night. You're going to have good quality sleep. You're going to repair. You're going to clean up all the junk, the toxins that built up in your brain. You're going to recover everything in your body. You're going to wake up. You're going to feel good. You're going to be energetic. You're going to be ready to go. You're going to have a better day. That's going to lead to a better night. And you get into this good cycle. And that's where people want to be. But our stressful lives set us off course. And that leads us to be more off course and more off course and more off course. We're trying to flip the whole script with just a couple of really simple, really effective lifestyle changes.
That's excellent. And that's what people need. They need these simple answers. So what would be the product, since you're scientist in product formulation, what would be the product that they should reach for?
Yeah, so I've taken both these ingredients I just talked about, the amino acid 5-HTP, and we extracted from this African seed called Graphonia seed, and the 6-MBOA polyphenol from corn grass, and put them both in the same product. So I've got one product for adults. It's in a capsule. It's called Sleep Plus, and it's called Sleep Plus because it gives you the sleep, but it gives you the mood the next day. And then we just came out with a gummy version of that for children and or people who don't want to swallow pills. You can just take a couple of gummies and get the same ingredients with all the building blocks that help your body sort of run that biochemistry. So you can shift it towards serotonin if you need to, or shift it towards melatonin if you need to. And they work like crazy. They're not sleeping pills. They're not things that are going to knock you out. But in our studies, we're able to show that people fall asleep faster, they stay asleep longer, and they have better sleep quality, meaning they spend more time in REM, so their brain recovers, and more time in deep sleep, so their body recovers. And they wake up the next day and they're in a better mood and they're ready to go. So, I think it's solving a lot of those problems that, literally millions of people are struggling with.
I so agree. Now, in all fairness to the teenagers that might watch this, they're probably saying, it's not me, it's my parents. And so it does work on the parents too. So if the parents aren't sleeping, they too can go into, depression and then have other problems. So in all fairness, there are some kids that are going to be watching this saying, it's not me, it's my mom, it's my dad. So
Yeah,
just to flip that around, because sometimes that can be the stress factor in the family. So
that's right.
all right, great answers, great things for people to just really start, thinking about, letting it sink in and decide, okay, that's something that I can do. And there is this mentality that just give me a pill to fix it, but we don't want them going to the pharmacist. We don't want them going to their regular doctor to get a antidepressant. We've already covered that. There's horrific side effects to that. But if we can take a pill and fix it, plus add in all of the other adaptations to our scheduling, our eating, and things like that, then it can work. And then you get the blessing effect of the whole combination of changes plus some good herbal extracts.
Right, exactly. And that's where I think, supplements and herbals and nutrients, that's where they fit. They can sometimes be the first step for people. Let me just get a good quality sleep. Let me just start feeling better. Let me start being in a better mood. Let me improve my resilience so I can handle stress better. Let me use the pill to help with that. But then once you're in that better place, now you're probably more inclined to say, all right, let me see what I can do about my schedule. Let me see what I can do about how I'm interacting with other people. Let me see what I can do about my physical activity program. You're once you're in a better place, then you have more bandwidth, so to speak, to make some of those other healthy lifestyle choices that we want. And then the supplement ends up becoming just a piece of your overall regimen.
That is so true. So true. So sometimes diets first and it works. And other times it's like, just give me a supplement, get me over the edge, give me, so that I'm no longer on the edge, get me off the edge. Let me say it that way. I didn't
That's
mean, I
right.
wanted to say over the edge. That was the wrong way to go. But get me off the edge, and then I can now adapt. I can now, get into a good lifestyle. So great information, great takeaway. Thank you so much for your knowledge and for sharing it with all of us here at the Biblical Nutritionist. You are just such a great blessing to us. So I always appreciate these talks with you. Thank you for letting me share this video with you today. This is a very important topic. Now, I hope you also have a copy of my Treasures of Healthy Living Bible study so that you can learn how to cook for your family well. And if you have issues with suicidal thoughts or depression, then there are specialists for that. But if you would like to use the products that we mentioned in this video, I'll put links to those down below. But make sure you grab the coupon link that goes with it, because I want to save you money anytime I can. When we get our sleep in control, our whole day changes. So, whatever tool you need to use to make that happen, then I look forward to sharing those tools with you. So, thank you again for joining us here at the Biblical Nutritionist. And until next time, have an incredibly fantastic Amen day.